All right, well, it's 3:02. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone for right now. Unmute you, Riney. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. I did this 2 years ago, and it was a really great event. We did it here in the community in Siena. Obviously, it was a little bit easier in person, but in times like these, we have to adapt and make the best of things. And still, the tax, our appraisal district is not slowing down, so we can't either. But appreciate you all being on here today. The event will be recorded. I will be posting the audio or the video to sienatoday.com for people to see that there later for those who missed it. If you notice in the top right corner, if you click on the bottom of your screen, there should be a chat button. Or I think if you press Alt-H, it'll open up a chat bar on the right-hand side of your screen. If you press that, it'll open up the chat for this event. Now, a couple of things. First of all, you should see at the very top there a tax protest info. Does anyone, David, Dan, do you guys see that? Can you give me a thumbs up, or someone give me a thumbs up if they see that? Is that there? Should be a PDF. No? Okay. Let me add it again here. Now, so what I'm uploading is the handout information that Riney had provided. There's Riney's email address. This also includes some of the more generic handouts that we had from 2 years ago. A lot of the stuff that Riney's already going to go over just fine, but if you need it in writing, it'll be a little bit easier that way. Now, for the presentation, I'm going to turn over to Riney here in just a second. He has some information to go through. If you have questions, put them in the chat bar on the side there. We'll open it up for questions, and we'll go through all those questions at the end. We're not going to stop in the middle unless, Riney, if you see something that's really pertinent, really important to be answered right then, you're welcome to answer it. Otherwise, we'll keep an eye on those questions on the end, and we'll answer those at the end, okay? But put them in there. We can always go back through them. Is anyone seeing the tax protest PDF? Has that been uploaded now? Do you see it there?
Able to see it if you click the chat icon at the bottom of the screen.
Perfect. So that's the documents. That is also already on the sienatoday.com website. That's under the post that was about registering for this event. I put it down at the bottom just a second ago, so the link is there too, if you're not seeing it in the group chat. But anyways, thank you all for joining. Riney's here with Texas Protax. I am not an expert in protesting taxes. A lot of people ask me for valuations, they ask me for comps, and I can provide some of that information for you. I'm an expert in buying and selling real estate. I'm not an expert in these things, and I try to stick to the areas. I try to stay in my lane, handle the things that I do well, and let the experts handle the things that they do well. So when I need an expert, I turn to someone like Riney and his team at Texas Protax. He's going to walk us through your options, answering questions and all that stuff. But if you need an expert in property tax protest, he's your guy. All right. Riney, I'm going to turn it over to you now. If you want, you're unmuted, so you can talk at any time. If you want to say a few things and then go into your share screen, we should be able to see that.
You got it. So first, Kyle, thanks for getting the community together and inviting us to address your clients or future clients or whomever may be in the neighborhood that decided to join our communication here. My name is Riney Kotz. I am a senior property tax consultant licensed in the state of Texas to argue property taxes on the behalf of property owners. I work for a firm called Texas Protax. And screen, so thanks, Kyle. But if we have any questions that arise, I may wait till the end or ask you to email me those if I don't get to them. So it's my understanding that most of you folks live in Williamson County.
That's correct. There might be a few who don't, but for the most part, it is Williamson County.
Okay, so the presentation that I'm about to share on the screen, it is a combination of Travis County and Williamson County centric. So when I get to a page that just speaks directly to the population is much larger in Travis County, so there are items that I've included in this presentation that speak only to what Travis County does. So what we'll do is I'll gloss over those and move on to the things that are more pertinent to y'all. I am going to do a screen share now. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody? Do y'all see a stork and where your value comes from? All right. So well, where that's at's kind of taking me away from y'all seeing my face, but that's fine. So where does my value come from? It comes from a conglomeration of things, but the most important thing we need to remember, and I'm not defending the appraisal districts by any means, and this is by no means a political statement, but there are a few drop dead dates in the Texas Property Tax Code, which is part of our Texas Constitution. And one of those is your appraisal notice is your value as of January 1st. So the current pandemic that is going on, you may not receive much sympathy if you go protest your property based on any evidence that may have happened after April 1st. I'm just being honest with you. You'll get a really cold shoulder from the appraisal districts. So the first way that the appraisal district values a property is they value the land as a vacant, then they value your home. They value your home based on its square footage, its number of roof cut, its external finish, whether it's brick, whether it's plaster, whether it's hardy plank. And in Travis County, more so than in Williamson County, they also take into consideration the interior. So in Williamson County, if you're going in to protest your property that starts with a class R and then a number, and you have pictures of comparables that are much nicer than yours that the appraisal district is trying to use against you, please take photos of the interior of yours to show that it's not finished out as nice. Remember, this is mass appraisal, and they're taking an entire community. They're taking the sales from the previous year, and they're comparing them across the board. So if you live in a community that has 1,200 square foot homes all the way up to 4,000 square foot homes, when they value based on a median, one size range could skew the other, okay? In Williamson County, the class scale is an R0 all the way up to an R13. R13s are going to be the highest scale, and just the name that most people will know, Mr. Ryan's house, Nolan Ryan and Cimarron, is up there in one of those R double-digit numbers, if that makes sense. So in Williamson County, this class 2 that's in Travis would be an R1, and then this giant contemporary over here, which we don't see much in Williamson County, but would be an R13. And the reason that they do those, each of those levels of class has a replacement cost new factor. So the R2 does not have the same replacement cost as the R8. And that's how they're able to appraise a mass amount of properties at one time by giving them different classes. On to the next page here. Where do I find my class? This is a screenshot of the Travis Central Appraisal District, but it's the same in Williamson County. If you drop down the improvement tab in Williamson County, it will tell you what R number your house is. If you're in a neighborhood that has one individual builder, and you see that you're an R5 while the preponderance of your neighbors are R4s, if you were to protest on your own, I would stress you need to argue that. Why are you being treated differently? Okay. These two items here are the language here where my cursor's at is Travis centric, but what this is a representation of how as your home ages, the appraisal district allows it depreciation from replacement cost new. So we got a brand new house on the left, and then we have a downtown Round Rock or downtown Georgetown special on the left that was built in the 60s. Maybe has some remodeling or update, but its age floor life could go down as low as 65% if it's maintained. Okay, the appraisal district, all appraisers, they value the land as if vacant. And there are different methods in order to value land. If you live on a river or a lake, land is usually valued based on the front foot. So how many feet of waterfront you have. In this example here, this is Lake Austin, and these properties, this one is 75 FF, so 75 front feet, and it's $20,000 a front foot. This method could also be done on a commercial lot on a highway. How many front footage of highway do you have? If you ever drive around and you see a broker's sign or a realtor sign on a large tract that's on a main road, they'll usually be advertising how many front feet it has. I know that all of us here are probably worried about our houses, but I'm just giving you a little insight into what the appraisal district does or what appraisers do. The next method is the acreage method. This one is based on economies of scale, and it's usually used in rural areas. If you have a smaller tract, like this 30-acre tract at the bottom right corner, you may be at $15,000 an acre. Then you come over here and you're at almost 60 acres, you're at 13 an acre. But notice the generated value on this one is 769, and the generated value on this one is 459. Then we get to and we say it's on for $10,000, but it has a value that's well in excess of the others, and it's based on its size. If I could give you an example of economies of scale, not to offend anybody, but I want to kind of make this boil down as simply as possible. If you buy a single can of soda from a vending machine, you're going to pay $1.50, $1, whatever it costs. But if you buy a 12-pack of sodas, you're going to pay 30 cents a piece. But the whole 12-pack costs more than the single soda. Economies of scale. This is how commercial land is valued in central business districts or on high traffic thoroughfares. It's the square foot method. And this works the same or similar to the acreage economies of scale. The smaller the tract, the more, say we have 4 corner tracks at an intersection. One track on the northwest corner is 100,000 square feet because it's got a truck stop with several pumps on it. It could be valued less than the caddy corner track that might be 50,000 feet on a $1 per square foot basis. But you're going to find this in commercial. Not long ago, downtown Georgetown, downtown Round Rock, they were really jumping. Right now, they're pretty dang quiet, but that's how those properties are valued, on $1 per square foot. This is a Travis issue, but I do want to point this out so that you guys have some understanding if you're going to go protest your property in Williamson County, that Williamson County does not use size adjustments. They use a base land value. So there are occasions that you could get frustrated that you have the second smallest lot in the neighborhood, and then the giant cul-de-sac lots are valued the same as yours. So if you're on 50-foot lots and they're using comps from 70-foot lots, point that out to them. You're not making an adjustment for that having a larger lot. Does that make sense? Because the way that master plan communities are going now, so that we have all sociological groups covered for the most part, is they'll have a 60-foot lot section, an 80-foot lot section, and then maybe some 110s for estate homes, and that's the one that has the gate and there's 12 homes behind it. So just keep that in mind. Typically, appraisal districts are good about segregating the much larger lots into a separate neighborhood, but pay attention to the comparables that they want to use against you.
Hey, Riney, one quick question
Yeah.
about that. I recently saw in our neighborhood in the last year or so, in the last 1 or 2 years, that they made an adjustment after my home had been built for 2 years. They made an adjustment to my lot value. I'm assuming they might have made it across the community. How would they justify or go about making entire community lot adjustments like that?
Okay, so in a neighborhood that is established and there aren't any other lot sales, at some point in time, remember our homes are made out of sticks and bricks for the most part. That's the most conventional construction that there is. That begins to depreciate. So remember, they're valuing, their target is to value the whole package, right? But they have to value the land separate. So at some point, if I live in a neighborhood where when I bought my property for $250,000 and I had a $50,000 lot value, and now based on our previously thriving economy and low interest rates, my house value is $425,000. Well, at some point, the appraisal district has to make an allocation or a land to building ratio to determine what the location of the property supplies in value. So typically, when they raise the lots across the neighborhood, they lower the improvement value some. Or it's the improvement value stays even, but they raise the total value. Does that make sense in the way that I tried to explain it? Okay, so that's just an allocation, and then I'll call it, that's a popular word appraisal districts like to use, but it's a simple ratio of what is my location worth as to my total value, and your location being your land. So keep in mind, the appraisal district should use apples to apples when they're comparing your property to others at the protest level. Okay, market factors. So we covered that they value the land at its highest and best use as if vacant. Then they value the improvement. Then they add those two together, and you have a value. In this instance here, the subject improvement cost is $132,176, and the land value is $500,000, which equals $182.76. The property sold for $205. So the appraisal district is mandated to value at 100% of market value, right? So at least one of the properties in their sales array will be at 100%. This is an example of how they get there. They divide the cost, which is the improvements less depreciation plus land. They divide that by the sale price, and they get an 88.9% ratio. Right now, in this instance, they're 11% low, right? So what they do is they take the improvements and they calculate a multiplier that's called a market factor or in Williamson County, they simply call it the MMA, mass market adjustment. And they apply that to the cost of the improvements, never to the land, only to the cost of the improvements. And they come up with 154,646. So the new improvement costs less depreciation plus the market factor plus the land equals 204,646. Statistically, they're at their 100% target, right? Why is this important? Because this 117, depending on the size of your neighborhood, I'm going to throw out a random number. If your neighborhood's made up of 300 homes, every home gets that. Okay? You're not going to see that on their website. You'll only see it if you ask for an appraisal card. Okay? Assessed value versus appraised value. Assessed or taxable value is the number multiplied by the tax rate to produce your tax bill. Remember, the appraisal districts don't set the tax rates, the jurisdictions do, and then the tax office applies them to the value, less exemptions that the appraisal district put on it. So when you go down and you say, my taxes are too high, probably so, but in order to affect your taxes, you need to argue your value. If you're not going to talk to your local county commissioners or go to school board meetings or things like that, you're going to have to attack your value and have that reduced in order to affect a taxable change. Assessed value is your appraised value. It is your appraised value of your home minus any applicable exemptions. A homestead property's assessed value is capped at 10% increase per year. So if last year your property's value was $90,000 and this year you didn't do an addition, you didn't add a swimming pool, you didn't buy the lot next door and combine it with yours, it's the exact same thing as it was January 1st a year ago. The value goes up to $300,000. That's your market value or what the appraisal district thinks you can sell it for. If it is your homestead, your taxable value only goes from $90,000 to $99,000. If you own rent houses, this don't apply. Only to your homestead, all right? Then if we go into a flat market for several years and that value of that property stays at $300,000, your taxable value will continue to increase by 10% each year until it meets your market value. If your market value declines below your previous taxable value from the previous year, your new market value becomes your taxable value. Okay, so you pay taxes on the lower of the two numbers. Appraised versus market. Appraised / market value. What the district suggests your home would sell for on January 1st of a given year. The only value that you may discuss with the appraisal district. No cap on market values. So on market value, they can raise it to whatever they statistically believe that it would sell for. That's market value. So most of you have gotten your appraisal notice lately. And on the top of your appraisal notice, it'll say assessed value in one box and market value in the other box, or appraised value. You can only argue the appraised value. Most jurisdictions give you some sort of discount off of your taxable burden. That is probably on your appraisal notice based on last year's tax rates. The chief appraiser has to publish a good faith estimate of what they believe your taxes will be based on your current assessed value. But remember, it's off of last year's tax rates. So if the jurisdictions in August and September change the tax rates, you're only looking at a good faith estimate today, okay? Homestead cap, we kind of went over this. In 2016 to 2017, the market value increased 30%, while assessed value increased 10%. So in this scenario, the only way for me to procure you a tax savings or for you to procure you a tax savings is to obtain a value below $186,000. Does that make sense? Okay, were you a sale from the previous year? The appraisal district uses sales to value all of the other properties. If the appraisal district does not know what your purchase price is and you go into protest, they will ask you, and if your purchase price was lower, you'll probably gladly tell them that, right? Because in most instances, they'll reduce your appraised value down to what you purchased it for at least 1 year. I say in most cases because the definition of a market transaction includes marketing, includes willing buyer and willing seller, cash or its equivalents, and was it available to be bought by anybody? So in other words, David, if your neighbor of many years, y'all are standing in the driveway one day and they say, hey, I want to move. Did you want to buy my house before I put it on the market? And you say yes. The appraisal district may not accept that as a market transaction, especially if it was a deal that was 10 to 12% below what they think market was, if that makes sense. Or if you buy it from a relative, appraisal districts go to great lengths to attempt to determine whether transactions went from a father to a daughter, even though the daughter has a last name because she took her new husband's name. They go to great lengths to determine whether those sales are family sales or not. So in this instance, if you paid more for your house than what it's on the appraisal roll for, and you walk in and you want to argue your market value, in Williamson County, they're pretty strict about, I won't talk to you about your value unless you tell me what you paid for it. But there is also equal and uniform that you can protest, and equal and uniform is how are you being treated versus your neighbors. This year, this last legislative session in Senate Bill 2, the legislature took away the ARB, or Appraisal Review Board's, ability to increase your value. In the past, if someone had gone in and paid $500,000 for their house, the appraisal district had it valued at $440,000. The appraisal district was aware of the sale. If you went before the ARB, the appraisal district would ask the ARB, hey, our job's to value at 100% of market. They paid $500,000. Please increase their value to $500,000. So being unsure of the law, some people walked into that trap and got moved, from 440 to 500, and they complained to their representatives and their members of the Senate, and Senate Bill 2 put in the language that the ARB cannot increase your value. Okay? But you might want to save yourself a little bit of time if you paid more than 10% higher than what's on the appraisal roll, okay? The other thing about purchasing your home, if you're a recent purchase in the last year or so, there have been plenty of market transactions where the appraisal district only needs to use the previous 12 months, okay? You bought it in February of 19, you paid $360 for it, they have it valued at $390, and you go in thinking, hey, this is real easy, but don't forget that after you bought it for $360, you added a pool and an outdoor kitchen. Okay, because the appraisal district probably caught that when building permits were filed. You have to take that into consideration on top of your sale price. Okay, I'm just trying to warn you against blindsides. So this is a protest form. Mr. Langford, when he sent you your appraisal notice, probably sent you a protest form along with that. Williamson County is very notorious about, if you go to argue your value before the appraisal review board and you're making a value based on the second line that is unequal compared with others, but you forgot to check that box, the Williamson Appraisal District, in some instances, will recommend that the ARB don't listen to any of your evidence because you didn't protest that. So if you're going to protest on your own, check at a minimum both of those boxes. Personally, our firm, we protest everything. If we don't have any discussion about it, then the ARB doesn't make a decision on it. Just simply goes away.
Hey, Riney,
Yes.
can you go back there really quick?
Yeah.
This is a common question that I get a lot. And you kind of answered it, but you can provide some more clarity. First of all, I thought I was under the impression that you can only check one of those boxes. So that apparently that's false. You can check as many as you want. That's good to know. But I have a lot of people ask me when they're trying to do it on their own, what is the difference between filing for incorrect appraised value or value unequal to other properties? What's the difference there?
So remember, when value unequal compared to other properties is when you're using their noticed value. Okay, so if there's model matches that are 1,500 square foot by the same builder in the same neighborhood, and 7 of them are $8,000, $15,000 less than you, but you have the same amenities that they do, that would be, on the surface, an appearance of unequal appraisal. Okay, and remember, market value is only arguing what things sold for, the actual tangible number that we know. This sold for this. When you adjust that to make it like me, my value would be this. So equal and unequal, which districts call that an equity appraisal, just slang, that's using other appraised values. Okay, you know, we're in this pandemic and it says, should I e-file? I'll tell you, in Williamson County, if you e-file, they will send you an offer. And as well, if you like that offer, you can accept it. If you don't like that offer and you turn it down, Williamson County will set up a telephone or a video meeting with you for the informal. We have not been told yet how the formal proceedings will go, but maybe we'll all be open and ready to get back to some sense of normalcy. But right now, if you e-file and you do not accept the offer, you will get a telephone appointment. Okay, this is a case of e-filing and why we as professionals typically don't do it. In this case, this is an actual comment from the Travis Appraisal Review Board. The owner of this property says, as a real estate agent, I feel that our property value topped out last year. Although our lot is 0.63 acres, the topography includes a wet weather creek along Laurel Valley. There is no backyard as the house sits on a steep rocky hill. Moreover, there is no room to expand the septic field to accommodate a larger home to be built on this site. The house was built in 1961, and although it has been remodeled some, the floor plan as it is today is basically functionally obsolete. Data suggests that our house is worth about $254 a square foot, which puts our value at $610,000. So he argued market conditions, terrain, and functional obsolescence. Those are all good points right there. This was his resolution. He got an e-file offer made per a sales grid, and he accepted a 20 change in his value when none of his issues were addressed. The median informal reduction in that particular Travis neighborhood that year was 6.79%. So he missed out on 6.5%. So I will tell you that appraisal districts generate these comparison grids for e-file and the offers electronically. and they have a statistical measure in place. Some years it's 8%, some years it's 5%, where that electronic draft would get kicked out and an appraiser would review it before it goes to you. So there aren't a lot of home runs based on legitimate evidence that you may submit on an e-file. They're low risk and they're typically low reward. Should I e-file case number 2? This person moved into their home in 2004. Suddenly her homestead exemption disappeared. All she wants it done is put back on, all right? This was in 2016. When we reviewed it 12 months later, the homestead exemption was never applied back to the property. Okay, so our noticed value was reduced by almost $2,000, and I have not looked lately. She may still be sitting there without a homestead exemption. If you've lived in a property for a long time, the appraisal district will do random exemption checks where they'll send you a letter. You've got to fill it out saying, yes, I still live here. And they're required to do that by the comptroller's office. If you don't do that, it can be quite tedious to get your homestead exemption put back on place. So if the appraisal district mails you anything, return it unless they mail you a letter you paid for your house. Texas is a non-disclosure state, so you don't have to reveal that. So going to an informal appeal, there's 3 typical avenues of relief. Market appeal, what did like and similar homes sell for? An equity appeal, how are like and similar properties valued versus mine? And then a characteristic correction. So when things are under construction and they're moving really fast, sometimes an appraiser will put the house next door to you on your lot, but the house next door to you is a 2-story house with a game room and a 5th bedroom because that person took some options at time of contract, but you have a 1-story house. Sometimes the appraisal district flip-flops those. So check your square footage and check your subclass. Am I in R5? Is everybody else in R5? Okay, that's characteristic corrections. On a market appeal, there's a sales grid. The Williamson grid, as far as having the lines, looks similar to this, okay? The place where it's going to differ is the Williamson Central Appraisal District adjusts your property $500 per year of difference versus the sales, okay? Where the appraisal district and percentages. These properties come down. This one is an exact match. Oh, I'm pointing with my finger, excuse me. This one is an exact match. You can see that there are no adjustments made here. It comes in at 305, which matches its sale price. This one is a little bit different in size. It is smaller than the subject, so it is adjusted upward to make it look like the subject, and it also has a slightly different land value. Those 2 items are added together, and they create 301. This one is a little bit more different, and it creates a value of 340. Common sense would tell you that there's probably something different about comp number 3 than the other 2. So most staff members at Williamson, if you say, hey, that one looks so much different, why do we not, let's not use it. In this case, I wouldn't make that argument because it's a median. Instead of going to the 301, 206, you would go between 301, 206, and 305. So just pay attention to the few dollars there. There's a 4th comp in that we didn't include on that page. That's why the median is at that 301. This, if you're going to submit evidence, please put your R numbers or your PID numbers on your evidence, because the appraiser is not going to look up those R numbers for you, and they get real tired of typing in addresses all day long. This is a tip to get along. Okay. Then make sure that they're in your neighborhood. In Travis County, unlike Williamson County, the house right next door to you could not be in your neighborhood. And I'll show you why here in a second. But make sure the properties that you're trying to use for equal and uniform are in your neighborhood, and it's on their website. Market appeal, you take in a comp, because Kyle is gracious enough to give you a couple of agent one sheets, and make sure you write the property ID on it, okay? And there's the address. You type the address into your local CAD's website, and you put the PID number on there. This is an equity appeal. Notice that these are all noticed values. None of them are round numbers like what we saw in the sales comparison. Adjustments are made for class. They're made for depreciation. They're made for size. They're made for amenities like porches, garages, pools, and outdoor kitchens. Then they're added up together, and then an indicated median occurs. Where equal and uniform came from, for the most part, were in arguments in Houston where there's no zoning. Equal and uniform came along many years ago, okay? Where there's no zoning, so there could be a gas station next to a house, next to an ice cream shop, right? In Travis County and Williamson County, we have zoning to protect us from things like that. So in areas that are more homogeneous, equity doesn't do you all that well, okay? An equity appeal, if you want to give the appraiser comps, make sure you give them the PID number, make sure they're in the same neighborhood, and make sure you're using the market value, not the taxable value. You have to use market value. Another person's exemptions aren't yours to take advantage of. That's the simplest way I could just describe that. But if you take this number in to argue, the appraiser's going to pour you out, okay? If you want to take in photos of your property to show condition issues, I haven't remodeled, I haven't done anything, take photos that are representative. If you're going to take this under the counter photo to say, look how bad my cabinets are, you better have this representative photo to go with it. No close-ups. That doesn't tell an appraiser anything, okay? Characteristics appeals, there's stuff wrong. In December of 2019, a tree fell on my house, and on January 1st, here's my estimate to repair. If this happened to you in September of 2019 and you got it repaired, and on January 1st it looked like a brand new roof, they're not going to consider that the roof was repaired. It's already done on January 1st, right? So the condition had to exist on January 1st for them to consider it, okay? Going to the formal hearing. Typically, if we were going to a formal hearing in front of people, then we would have 5 copies of our evidence to be presented. We would withdraw the protest you're not making. So if you protested market and equity and you only want it, then withdraw market so that the ARB can't make a decision based on sales if they don't favor you, okay? And then 2020 formals are going to begin sometime in June. Both appraisal districts that affect our local area, Travis and Williamson County, are working very diligently to figure something out. The most important thing is the 3 people on the minimum of 3 people that are on the ARB, they don't work for the appraisal district. It may feel like they do at times, but they work for the taxing jurisdictions and they're appointed by the local administrative judge. The board of directors for the appraisal district nor the chief appraiser hire them. I guess that's all I'm going to say about that. I would say that if you're taken into an ARB panel and the appraiser is already talking to the panel about it, ask them to stop, because that's ex parte communication. Make sure they only talk about your property while they're on the record. What not to say, price per square foot. I mean, it is a legitimate argument when it lines up with what your indicated values are for a market appeal, a cost market analysis. Appraisers typically don't use those. They don't necessarily always take into account a third car garage, a swimming pool. Sometimes they can have a hole in it, although they are a valuable tool for deciding what you want to market your home for. Cracks in the driveway, your yard slopes. Be careful about saying your yard slopes. Remember who got hijacked in the saying that I have a wet weather creek and no backyard because it's a rocky drop off. If you're talking about how your backyard slopes, but you take a picture of it and you can see 20 miles, you may have a view that the appraisal district isn't capturing. So be cautious, okay? And the best way that you could probably see that, if you're on a side of the street that has a view, but you're the same value, your land value is the same as the people across the street from you that back up to other houses, you probably don't want to discuss your backyard sloping, okay? A messy neighbor, my taxes are too high. I mentioned the taxes earlier. The only way to affect a change to your taxable value is to lower your market value below your cap value if one exists. I'm a real estate agent. Every appraiser is going to reply, I'm an appraiser. So, and then don't average anything. You want to talk about the medians all the time, medians all the time, okay? That's it for that. I want to get back to this messy neighbor deal because it can really bother a homeowner. But until that messy neighbor sells with all the mess in their yard, the appraisal district will tell you that I can't quantify them having a dirty yard. But if they do sell and they sell for $20,000 less than a similar property one street away, then for the following year, you should get that 20% discount or $20,000 discount. It's something for you to argue about. But it will sound very facetious when the appraiser says, it didn't sell, so I can't quantify what the mess is worth. But I got these other 19 properties that did sell. And none of them were messy like your neighbor. I know you don't like it, but I can't do anything about it. So that's it for this presentation. I am happy to answer some questions. There's some stuff over here. Thank you. That makes sense. When I have the screen share going on, I can't see the comments. Let's see. Do you have to disclose the type of sale?
This was when I asked, I typed this question in, Riney, and when I asked this question was when you were talking about someone who purchased a property for below, quote unquote, below market value because they bought it. I mean, it was distressed. It wasn't listed. It was from a family member. Do you have to disclose that, or they have to discover that on their own?
Yeah, they have to discover that on their own.
Okay.
Don't give them any ice to make their tea cold. Let them drink hot tea.
And then the question right below that was when you talked about how the appraisal review board cannot raise your valuation now.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be accurate to say the only time where your value could be raised would be during, I forget what the period, the time frame is, but it's the review process where they actually make the appraisers go out to the neighborhoods and things like that. Once your value has been given to you in April, it can't go above that value. No one can adjust it to above that value.
Well, The appraisal district, any appraisal district can renotice a property's value that does not have a board order prior to the chief appraiser certifying the roll. And when I talk about roll, that's all of the value in the appraisal district is called the roll, and that is what's given to the taxing authority or the tax assessor collector, okay? When appraisal notices go out, those are just records. So right now you'll see disclaimers on websites saying these values are subject to change, maybe protested and changed. So in order for a chief appraiser to certify his appraisal records that he gave to the appraisal review board, 95% of the value in the county has to be out of protest. Okay. Then certification occurs and the records become the roll, and the roll is given to the taxing authorities. If you protested your property, remember I told you about looking at your square foot and your class and all that? If you protested your property and you have an outdoor kitchen or a guest house and it's not on the appraisal roll, and you go to an informal, the appraiser will start trying to bully you saying, hey, we don't have this on there, because they pull up an aerial photo of your house and try to get you to withdraw your protest, okay? But if you get a board order, they cannot increase your value before certification ends. Before certification ends, or before certification happens, if the chief appraiser realizes that he or his staff created an egregious error in a neighborhood, they can renotice your value up or down. Okay. That's a convoluted answer. The only thing I can guarantee you is that the ARB cannot raise your value. Okay.
Dan, I'll answer that question when we're done here with Riney. But Riney, why don't you answer the next question from RMS? Maybe you want to talk real quick about the people that try to do it on their own versus the people that hire you. Like, when usually is a good sign that it's hired a professional versus trying to do it on your own? What are the biggest obstacles? People that, I mean, how do you know which one to do? And yeah, kind of what it would cost to have Protax represent one of us.
Okay. The cost deal, since this is recorded and appraisal staff folks can get that, that's not something we necessarily talk about. We talk about that to an individual person.
Okay.
So anybody who wants to email me, I got my email there. Please either, snip it or snag it or just write it down. Email me and I'll discuss that with you. Whatever we charge, it's probably worth you not taking off from work and going and spending potentially up to 3 hours at the appraisal district. But if you call me and say, hey, I want to protest my property, you shouldn't. Because I don't want you to get frustrated with me because I didn't do a good job, but I'll explain to you why your value's okay. So, as far as hiring us, we have a proprietary system that we've built over the years that finds the holes in all of the data virtually immediately. Then in addition, many of us here have worked at appraisal districts before. We have 2 attorneys on staff that don't practice as attorneys, but we're all proficient with what the legislative changes have been. We're all proficient code is, and we're all proficient at being cautious to protect our client, because remember, we're signing a fiduciary responsibility agreement by signing that appointment of agent form.
And if someone wants to hire you guys, the best first step is just to email you.
So you can email me with specific questions, or you can go to our website and it says to become a client, click here now. You click there, you put in your property. If there is something wonky that we catch in the algorithm about it, an agent will review it and call the property owner prior to just sending them an agreement.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me ask a question here. Screen share. This is the PDF that you sent out?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that is included in it. Yes, sir.
All right. So this, guys, it's on sienatoday.com, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
This is all relevant right now. None of these things were changed in the last legislative session. So if you own your house and it's your primary residence and you haven't filed a homestead, you can file it for 2020, 2019, and back to 2018. So please check and do that. If you, obviously, we're hopeful that you had already paid your taxes in 18 and 19, you would get a small refund for those taxes paid versus what your taxes are with exemptions. Important dates, January 1st, January 31st to pay your tax bill, April 1st. Some of these things got moved and you may have seen them in the news, but May 15th did not get moved in Travis and Williamson County. May 15th is the protest deadline. Let's see. Thank you, Colin Riney. Great info. I appreciate that. I will tell you that this gets kind of stale. Not for me, but when I'm going through and I'm talking about NMAs and RCNs, and that's kind of stale because you only think about it one time a year. And if you went to one of these tax talks with us before, you're like, hey, what did he say about that data? Oh man, that was so boring. I forgot what he said. I appreciate y'all listening and the couple of smiles that I see, because I know this can be mundane and boring.
No, I appreciate that, Rainey. Yeah, definitely. Ryan's information will be on sienatoday.com on the website there. The downloads will be there. The link to Texas Protax and their website where you can reach them. You can fill out the link to become a client if you're interested in doing that. Ryan, I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to hang on for about 10 or 15 minutes for anyone who has some more personal questions. And I know that there's a few things that I would share, kind of some of the more real estate questions that people have about property taxes that aren't really about property taxes, but they think they're related, that I'm going to answer. But you're welcome to go at this point, or you're welcome to hang on. Ryan, appreciate you taking your time here. Really
Thank all of y'all. Be safe. All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, I hope for those of you who are still here, I hope that was helpful for you. It was long. It was a little dry, but I think it was some good information. I know that I learned a lot. I will be posting this whole video to Siena today, so that if you want to go back and read it, you can watch it. I'm going to answer some questions right now really quick while I have you here. If you want to go, you can go, but I'm answering some questions that I get a lot of from people in our community. Dan, I saw your question before about, let me read it. Why does Siena Mud not allow Homestead or OA? The OA, that's the, which one's that again? I'm going to unmute everyone. There we go. How do I unmute everyone? Here we go. Unmute all. Boom.
Yeah, that's the old age.
Okay. I thought it was. Good question. I made a video about homestead exemptions. I'll send you the link to that, Dan. It's on sienatoday.com, but it's on the video. It's on YouTube. I'm going to send you a link to it. Okay. So it talks about homestead exemptions. From what I understand, homestead exemptions only apply towards certain things, and the county. So the state determines that every school board has to provide a certain exemption for your property taxes. And so first of all, every school board provides an exemption, and that the counties are able to provide additional exemptions as they choose to do. Okay. So there's no requirements as far as what, other than the school board one, there's no requirements as far as what those homestead exemptions have to be applied for. So your MUD, the homestead exemption doesn't apply to that. It apply, like Williamson County has a $5,000 deduction for roads and servicing, road servicing. Travis County has a different deduction for homestead exemptions. Now, from what I understand about the over 65 exemption is that locks your valuation in place. It does provide a small reduction in what your taxable value is, but the main protection is that it lacks your value in place, so that can't be raised at all. The rate can change, but the value can't be raised. From what I understand, those are the only protections, but there are some links in that video that might be helpful for you to give some more information about that.
Okay,
Does that answer
appreciate
your
it.
question?
Yeah, sure. Sounds like it's more a legislative type thing to bring up, like with my next door neighbor, for instance, who's our Texas representative.
Oh, yes.
Yes, James.
Oh, I didn't know he lived there. Good.
Yeah. Thanks, though. Yeah, that answered my question.
Yeah, one person asked me, one person did a question at the beginning that says, what are the grounds at which I can protest the appraisal? I think that was pretty effectively answered by Riney. Well, the two main ways that you can answer that you can protest your taxes would be on the values and comparing it to either comparing it, number one, to the other assessed values that are on the appraisal district website. So if you go on the website and your neighbor's house is valued at a different price than yours is, I've done that before. My neighbor's house across the street has the same square footage as mine, and their property was valued at about $20,000 less than mine. That didn't make a whole lot of sense. So when I protested myself online once, I gave some of those homes in our neighborhood that the Williams County Appraisal District had given different values than what mine was, and mine was adjusted for that reason. The other way would be if you're using comps. That would be actual sold data that you'd have to get from myself or another agent. We can provide you with, okay, this is what some other homes similar size to yours actually sold for in our neighborhood. Unfortunately, I'll be honest with you, a lot of times for a lot of people in our neighborhood, with the way that our values are going, it's not helpful data. I can provide it for you, I can look it up, but values are, I mean, for better or worse, values are going up in our neighborhood. And for most people, it's kind of, I'll rephrase that. It's kind of a mixed bag. There are resale numbers that might be below what your appraised value is, but there are other ones, including new home values, that are above yours. And so sometimes it's like the appraisers can choose which numbers they want to use. So it might help some people more than others. It might not help you at all, but I'm more than willing to pull the information for you.
Hey, Kyle?
Yes.
One thing I just wanted to point out, one thing I actually did informally protest via emails, and it actually worked, was the square footage they had on my house wasn't correct. And I, said, here's all the models, and sent them all the documentation and everything. At first, they kind of said, well, we do exterior measure versus interior, et cetera, et cetera. I happened one day walking to catch the appraiser who happened to be doing some appraisals. I had her come over and remeasure the house, and sure enough, she got a different value, and subsequently changed it. So I was about 100 square feet less now than what they had on the record. So that's something people may want to make images properly recorded.
Yes. Yeah, that would be the third one that he pointed out. The way they can adjust it would be the characteristics. I've had other clients before who they found out, I mean, they had been paying property tax on their house for 10 years, and they found out that their garage was included in the measurements. They took that information to the appraisal district, and they got their value adjusted back 2 years, because they can go back up 2 years. They got their value adjusted up to 2 years, and they got that money back for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something to look at to see if your square footage is accurate. Often it's not accurate. It's pretty close. But if they forgot something like that, like the garage or something like that, I've had that happen, and that's very often the case.
Yep.
Thanks for pointing that out, Dan. The only other question I'm going to answer right now, if no one else has any other questions, one of the questions I get is, what relation does appraised value, that these assessed values from the county, from taxes, what association does that have to my property's value, my resale value? Like some people some people think things like, well, why not have, I mean, if I protest my value with the county and they reduce my property down, is that going to reduce how much I might be able to sell my house for in a year or two? So first of all, that answer is no. Really, there is no linkage, absolutely none, between what the value that the county says your house is worth. There's no linkage between that and what your home would sell for. There are also times where I go and meet with someone who's thinking about selling, and they say, I think my house is worth $350,000 because that's what the county's taxing me on. And they think their house is worth that because that's what the county is taxing them on. Once again, both up and down, it has nothing to do with what your house would sell for. What your house will sell for is going to have to do with market conditions. It's going to have to do with, marketing, what else is available at the time. There's a lot of things that go into that. And your appraised value, plus or minus, has nothing to do with what your house value is actually worth. Does anyone else have any questions that I can answer today? Otherwise, I'll wrap this up. I'll post it once again. I'll post it. But any other questions at all that I can answer today?
Kyle, I do have a question. Since I filed the home exemption prior to this appraisal value that came in, should I be expecting anything with regards to a revision off of this? Or because I'm not sure if that got submitted or was received on their end, because I didn't get any notification.
Good question. Good question. So you purchased your house in 2019?
Yes.
Okay. So you filed your homestead exemption between January 1st and April 30th of
Yes.
2020, which is the right time to do it. Unfortunately, those exemptions are not going to be applied till the next year.
Okay.
And the way that they protect you, like as far as your price going up or down, going up less than 10%, that's not going to protect you until the next year either.
Okay.
So you filed it. It will show up in the next few months here. It doesn't show up immediately, but it won't protect you right now, but you'll have that protection for later.
Okay.
Any other questions? Good question. All right, guys, I really appreciate you joining. I know a lot of people weren't able to join, and I'll post a video. If you have any questions, anything I can help you with, I'm here. Talk to you soon.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.